Assignment of Contract of Purchase and Sale, ACPS Q&A from February the 13th, 2014. Since the latest standard forms were released, several questions have been raised. These answers were provided by Ed Wilson of Lawson Lundell LLP, who donated more than 60 pro bono hours on this project. Ed has been the Canadian Bar Association BC branch's representative on BCREA's Standard Forms Committee for the past 10 years. See a Realtor's Guide to the BCREA CBA assignment contracts for answers to questions about specific clauses on the forms. Here we go. Why do Clause 518 of the ACPS New Development and Clause 414 of the ACPS Non-Developer provide that the assigner will pay the GST? That section provides GST, the assignment amount is inclusive of any GST payable with respect to the assignment agreement, and the assignor shall remit any GST payable. Clauses 518 and 414 address the GST payable under the ACPS, not the GST payable under the original contract of purchase and sale. When an assigner assigns a contract and charges an assignment amount, the profit or flip fee, GST, may be payable on the assignment amount. Whether GST is payable on the assignment amount largely depends on the nature and intention of the assignor. If this is an isolated transaction and the assignor entered into the contract of purchase and sale intending to close on the transaction, the assignment amount is probably not subject to GST. If the assignor entered into the contract with the intention to flip the contract, then the assignment amount is subject to GST. Since whether the assignment amount is subject to the GST depends on the nature and intention of the assignor, the ACPS is structured to provide that the assignment amount includes the GST. If the ACPS is subject to GST, the assigner will have to remit the GST. For example, an assignment amount of $50,000 includes GST of approximately $5,350. So the profit is $44,650. If not subject to the GST, the entire $50,000 is profit. In any event, the assignee has paid to the assignor GST payable, and under the Excise Tax Act, the assigner is responsible to remit the GST to the Canada Revenue Agency. As the assignee has paid the GST to the assignor, who is liable to remit it to the Canada Revenue Agency, the assignee has no further liability with respect to the GST. One important qualification to the general rule: where the assignor is a non-resident, the assignee will have to remit the GST payable. Who remits the GST? If the assignment is subject to GST, except in certain uncommon situations, the assignor will have to remit the GST to the Canada Revenue Agency. Therefore, any assignor has to consider whether the assignment is subject to GST, and they should get legal or accounting advice in this regard. See Clause 524 New Development and Clause 4.20 Non-Developer. If the assignment is subject to GST, the assignor or their legal and accounting advisors, if so retained, will have to complete the appropriate forms and remit the GST to the Canada Revenue Agency. One important qualification to the general rule: where the assigner is a non-resident, the assignee will have to remit the GST payable. If the assignment is not subject to GST, then there is no GST to remit and no form to complete. If the assignor wants to net a specific amount from an assignment that is subject to GST, they will have to ensure that the assignment amount includes a sum to cover the GST. For example, if the assigner wants to net $50,000 after paying the GST, the assignment amount will have to be increased to $56,000. It should be noted that clauses 5.16 and 4.13 have nothing to do with the GST under the original contract. If the contract is for a new home, that contract is subject to GST, which is paid on closing. The GST under that contract is forwarded to the developer on closing, and the developer remits the GST to the Canada Revenue Agency. Should in Clause 5.2 of the ACPS new development, which provides that the deposit will be held in trust pursuant to the Real Estate Services Act, RESA, instead refer to the Real Estate Development Marketing Act, REDMA, since it deals with deposits that relate to projects over 5 units. The deposit referred to in Clause 5.2 is the deposit under the assignment agreement, not the deposit under the contract. For example, a contract to buy a $500,000 unit could provide that the deposit of $50,000 is to be paid to a lawyer in trust. Depending on the nature of the project, it may be subject to REDMA, in which case the lawyer should hold the deposit on behalf of the developer subject to the terms of REDMA. If the deposit was paid to a realtor, the realtor would hold it subject to the provisions of REDMA, but also subject to the provisions of RESA, i.e. as a stakeholder. In the case of the deposit with respect to the assignment, for example, the assignment amount is $100,000, but a deposit of $10,000 is paid until the assignee removes his subject. When he increases it to the full $100,000, the realtor would hold that deposit pursuant to RESA, i.e. as a stakeholder, not pursuant to REDMA. What is a deposit protection contract? The deposit protection contract, referred to in Clause 2 of the ACPS new development, is provided for under REDMA. See Section 19.1. It allows the developer to make use of the deposits placed by purchasers in new projects. Under REDMA, the deposit normally must be held by a lawyer, notary, or realtor until titles are raised. See Section 18.1 of REDMA. However, if a deposit protection contract is in place, the deposits may be released to the developer to fund the construction. A deposit protection contract is a contract between the developer and the insurance company, wherein the insurance company agrees to refund the deposits to the purchasers if the developer fails to complete the project. The developers are paid as usual into a lawyer's or realtor's trust account, and the insurance company issues a policy in favor of the original purchaser. As construction proceeds, the lawyer or realtor holding the deposit is authorized by the insurance company to release portions of the deposits in draws to the developer to fund construction. This significantly reduces the developer's cost of borrowing. If the original contract is assigned as contemplated by the ACPS, the insurance company will insist on having a release signed by the original purchaser and the developer, stating that the original purchaser releases the insurance company of all liability under the deposit protection policy, and they have assigned their interest in the deposit monies to the assignee. If the insurance company does not get the release, the closings may be held up. The question, is the deposit protection contract in place, is asked on the ACPS to flag the issue for the parties. If the answer is yes, the realtor should get the form of release from the insurance company. The name of the insurance company will be in REDMA disclosure statement, so the realtor can have it signed when the ACPS is firm. Does the following language on the ACPS new development refer to the contract of purchase and sale? Is a deposit protection contract in place? Yes or no? Yes, and that's why it's in the developer section. It refers to the deposit protection provisions under REDMA. Under a deposit protection contract, the developer enters into a deposit protection contract with an insurance company that allows the developer access to the deposits to fund construction of the project. The insurance company registered a second mortgage on title behind the construction lender. All of the deposits are paid to the lawyer or notary or realtor as usual. The insurance company releases the deposits to the developer in draws as construction progresses. If the developer fails to complete the project, the insurance company will provide funds equal to the deposits paid by the assignee buyer back to the assignee buyer. If the assignee buyer fails to complete, the insurance company releases the balance of the deposit to the developer. The insurance company may require the buyer to sign a release as a condition of releasing their mortgage on title to the strata lot at closing. Releases must be provided by assignee and assignor, confirming the assignment and that the assignor has no action against the insurance company. Are all contracts assignable? All contracts, not just real estate contracts, with a few exceptions, are assignable unless the contract or a statutory provision says otherwise. Unless additional provisions are added to the contract, it is assignable by the buyer without the seller's consent. See the Law and Equity Act, Section 36 and 411076, British Columbia Limited versus Mikalo, 1992, 72 BCLR 2D 252. The standard BCREA CBA contract of purchase and sale is assignable. However, it may not be assigned where the seller's position would be prejudiced by such assignment. For example, a contract that provides for the seller taking back a mortgage may not be assignable if the seller's decision to agree to a vendor take-back mortgage was based on the buyer's credit worthiness. If the original buyer guarantees the contract to be granted by the assignee, the issue may be overcome. See King versus Urban and Country Transport Limited, 1973, 40 DLR 3D 641, Ontario, CA, Nepean Carlton Developments Limited versus Hope, 1978, 1 SCR 417, and Bay River Development Corp. versus Small World Holding Limited, 1990, 44 BCLR 2D 380 CA. Most developers' contracts are either not assignable or are assignable only with the developer's consent or upon compliance with the developer's conditions. What if the assignment is for less than the original purchase price? This is very specific to each deal. Rather than completing Section 5.1, it's better to refer the matter to the parties' lawyers to draft the appropriate addendum, or provide that it's subject to lawyers' review. BCREA, Vancouver. The end.